Okay, let's get started. Hello all, welcome to our presentation on the shared plugin platform. Just a quick background on what this talk is about. This is from the Academy Software Foundation Open Review Initiative. This is one of the projects under that umbrella. As many of you might be already familiar, Open Review Initiative, they focus on fostering the development of open source playback review systems, making sure they interact well with each other. There is already quite a few open source and commercial review systems, and part of the initiative is to make sure they talk to each other well. And from the Sony Pictures ImageWorks point of view, we are very interested in plugin development because that's been a big part of VitView, our own proprietary playback system, and it's been a big reason why it has been successful. So we wanted to contribute in the area of plugin development and how someone can write plugins and make it available on all these wonderful different playback systems. For today's talk, I just quickly want to go through the agenda. The offering we are making is a review plugin API, and we'll describe what it is. And then we'll go through some of the demos of how the RPA can be useful today for someone who is using it. Then we'll switch gears and we'll look at behind the scenes technology, how it is architected and what it means for plugin developers. Then we'll talk about what's coming up next, and then finally, how one can get started and then get involved in this development. I wanted to quickly introduce my fellow presenters and the few team engineers, starting with Akim. Hello. Kaylee.
Yeah, hello.
Maria Paneer.
Hello.
Maria Vinita.
Hello, everyone.
And finally, Pavel Jukas.
Hello, everyone.
Excellent. All right, let's quickly jump into talking about Review Plugin API. So a quick history of how this came about. So Review is our proprietary review system. We use at ImageWorks. It's another Academy winning product. It's been used at ImageWorks for more than 20 years, has a long history, very successful, people love it, but at the same time, it's, as time goes on, it becomes hard to add on new features and we are running into performance issues and just getting hard to introduce newer things people are asking for. So a few years ago, we started thinking about revamping it and how to bring about all these new cool features. But it is a daunting task. Writing everything from scratch is a big ask. So we started looking at open source technologies. Are there technologies out there on which we can build VitView, right? Because creating a frame accurate video, audio synchronized system that works on Mac, Windows, Linux, and web and everything it's not easy. It's pretty hard to do. And there is no reason to do it once again from scratch, right? So we were looking to see what else is out there. Can we take something and then build our things on top of it? So Review Plugin API is kind of born from this approach, and we started collaborating with the Academy Software Foundation, which was also starting to look at this particular area and bringing all these different companies together to just talk about, because it seems like everybody was doing it on their own and reinventing the wheel, so to speak. So we joined the effort and started involving our engineers in that effort. So Review Plugin API at the core is basically a common API by which you can access all these different open source core engines, right? And also it's a widget collection because a lot of these review systems have some common elements. For example, color picker, right? Everybody has their own color picker. And most of them are Qt based. They use the same kind of GUI framework. So we thought there is really no need to everybody invent their own. And this could be one way that we can contribute, right? So if you are going to use existing open source technologies for review playback system, maybe this common widget collection is something that everybody can contribute. And this plugins is something that everybody can contribute, because every studio, every user has their own list of plugins that they develop for the review system that they use. So this could be something that we can all come together and then contribute together. And because Review Plugin API is designed to work with different systems, this is, the main focus is interoperability, right? And which is something that, again, Open Review Initiative is a big focus. Now we are starting to look at ODIO for exchange formats and a common sync server and so on. So this is another way we thought we could help bring all these different products together. And specifically for companies like ImageWorks, where we are primarily serving our artists, and just not worrying about the underlying core playback engine helps us to focus on our specific workflows, like what is our animation team needs, what does our lighting team needs, and creating all these plugins and creating solutions for our artists. So which helps us focus on creating these solutions and be beneficial. So we introduced this as an idea last year as a proof of concept. We introduced just one widget, which was the color corrector widget, and a very thin layer of API wrapper. But this year we are proud to bring a lot more widgets and much more mature API that someone can use today. So here is a quick look at what is coming up this year. As I said, we are bringing 5 or 6 different widgets that people can use. And API has gone through a complete revamp. It's a lot more mature now. By using this, plugin developers can write real-world applications. And then finally, we are introducing this RPA mode. This is specifically for OpenRV users. If you are currently an OpenRV user, this is something that you can download today and then start experimenting with it. And so what is this RPA mode? RPA mode, you can think of it as a way to make use of all these widgets that I talked about within OpenRV currently. So what are some of these widgets? For example, the session manager or a playlist manager. So playlists are a big part of IPU's success. And when we started evaluating OpenRV, this was missing, and this is a huge thing for our users. They really, really wanted this, right? They're used to working in this way. This was missing, so we really wanted to bring Playlist Manager. It was no easy task because of the way OpenRV internally operates, but our team was able to implement this. So this is our main offering, and then bunch of other widgets which build on top of what OpenRV already has. OpenRV already has annotation tools. We are happy to bring some more additional annotation tools on top of it. Same with color correction and the screen overlay system. Finally, we also wanted to show you a Python interpreter our team developed that lets you troubleshoot within OpenRV for plugin development. With that, let's jump into demos. We'll look at each of these widgets quickly so that you get an idea of what it is and how they work. To start with, I invite Maria Venita, who will talk about just what this RPA mode is and how to use it and how it works within OpenRV.
Hello everyone, and welcome to RPA demo. So today I'm going to show you what RPA Review Plugin API looks like when integrated with OpenRV. So when you first launch OpenRV with RPA enabled, as you can see, the interface looks just like regular OpenRV. You can open a video, scrub through it, use all the tools you're used to. It feels exactly the same. The only visible difference is a new menu option under OpenRV called Switch to RPA. Now let's go ahead and select that option and see what happens. So before we switch, a warning appears. This is important. It tells you that switching to RPA will clear your current session. So if you're working on something, make sure to save your OpenRV session first. Now let's proceed and switch to RPA mode. As you can see, we are now in RPA mode. The previous session has been cleared and the interface has changed a bit. You'll notice the layout now looks different from the usual OpenRV. That's because RPA comes with its own widgets and tools, few of which are already open when you switch modes. You can find all the available RPA widgets under the Tools menu. Each widget is purpose-built to support a robust end-to-end review pipeline. And yes, all RPA widgets are dockable. You can move them around, hide them, or adjust layouts to fit your workflow. You would also notice some of OpenRV's existing functionalities missing, starting with the file menu. This has been completely replaced with RPA file menu. In addition to that, now RV Session Manager is now replaced by the RPA Session Manager. RV Timeline is replaced by the RPA Timeline Manager. And RV Annotation Tools are replaced by RPA Annotation Tools. Now, why have we done this? This is because RPA has its own session layered on top of the regular OpenRV session. RPA session structure is different and distinct from the default OpenRV session. And any OpenRV features that aren't compatible with RPA will be automatically disabled in this mode. But that said, we have retained a lot of standard OpenRV features that do work really well in RPA mode, as you can see here. For example, most of the options under control to play, stop, go to frame, all of them work as expected. Even under tools, you still have access to most of OpenRV tools such as Timeline Magnifier, Image Info, Info Strip, Process Info, Source Details, etc. You can also use the interactive edit mode to modify color, such as gamma, exposure, hue, saturation. Now, all of these OpenRV functionalities, they work really well in RPA mode. So while the layout may look different, you still have plenty of familiar tools at your disposal. However, for the best experience in RPA mode, it's recommended to use RPA widgets since they are designed specifically for this mode. Now let's say you want to exit out of RPA and go back to standard OpenRV. Just like you entered RPA mode through switch to RPA, you can exit RPA mode through a new option under OpenRV called exit out of RPA. Now let's see what happens if you don't select this option and exit and close the application. As you can see here, when you launch again, OpenRV will reopen in RPA mode by default. So it's good practice to always save your RPA session and use the exit out of RPA option if you plan to return to the standard OpenRV environment next time. And that's a quick overview of RPA mode in OpenRV. Next up, the dev team will walk you through a full review cycle on how to load and organize clips, review them, and provide feedback using RPA tools.
Thank you, Maria. Next, I invite Kaylee to talk about the session manager.
All right, so hello everyone. Let's get started with the first step in the review process, loading and organizing media. So to prepare and manage reviews, we have a dedicated RPA widget called Session Manager that serves as the control center for loading and organizing review materials. And Session Manager is structured around 3 RPA concepts: clip, playlist, and session. So clip is the media to be reviewed. So all clips will come with some clip attributes that define them, and we can use these attributes to examine and modify the clips. And we have the playlist. Playlist is the container for the clips. So it allows the reviewers to organize their content in a meaningful way, whether it's like a sequence of shots or submissions pending approval. Session represents the current state of the review environment, which includes all the playlists and the clips. And Session Manager captures this state and presents it to us visually. So now let's look at the Session Manager in more detail. So the playlist panel here will display all the playlists that are currently active in the session. And the current playlist will be highlighted with the solid pink indicator there. And in terms of the playlist operations, we can create new playlists. We can also rename them accordingly. Playlists can also be deleted. However, when we delete these playlists, it's a soft delete, as you can restore them during the lifetime of the session. And you can also delete playlists permanently if it's not needed anymore. So playlists can also be selected and they can be moved up or down just to organize them within the current session. And all these operations allow the users to quickly prepare and clean up the playlist before and during the review. So once the playlists are ready, we can turn to the clips, and every clip is represented as a row, and clips will always belong to some playlist. So for clips operations here, we're adding some clips by selecting some media, and they'll be added to the current playlist that you're on. If you like to delete the clips from the playlist, simply select the clips you like to delete, and they'll be deleted from the session right away. And within a certain playlist, users can enable which clips will form a sequence. So for example, selecting a clip like this will make this clip active, and only the active clip will be used to form a sequence within the playlist. So for example, here we see that only one selected clip is active and only that clip's playing. Whereas if you select 3 clips here, those 3 clips will be active and form a sequence and will play. If none of the clips are selected, then all of the clips in the playlist will be considered. And here we are reordering the clips by moving them up or down. And you can see that this will change the play order of the clips. And this will change the order of the playback during the review of these clips. Okay, so moving on to the clip attributes, you can see that each column is representing some clip attribute, and you can customize which clip attribute you like to see. For example, I'm adding a few more new attributes here and hiding them. And this way, reviewers can customize what kind of clip metadata they would like to see about the clip during the review. And you can see that we have a few editable clip attributes here, which are indicated with the pen icon. And you can directly edit the values on the cell, and you can see the changes being applied right away. Okay, so additionally, to pair with the session manager, we have Session Assistant, which is a simple widget that provides easy and quick controls to iterate through the playlists and clips. So here we can go to previous next playlist or previous clip, next clip. And this way the reviewers or artists, they can easily jump across the playlist and clips. So together, these widgets provide flexible controls over the playlist and clips and help prepare and manage the review sessions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Next, Akim will talk about the review workflow.
Right, hi everybody. I'm going to show you an example of review workflow using RPA. So let's get started. I already uploaded a couple of playlists for us to review. So the playlist 1 to review and playlist 3 review clip 5. From the get-go, you can see the timeline has some kind of markers, yellow in color. They represent the points where certain clips, certain annotations or comments were left behind. So we can go through some of them and see, yes, indeed, there are some comments and annotations. All right, we also see that there are a bunch of comments left on specifically clip number 1. So we can click on the clip number 1 and a timeline update to represent only information about the clip 1. So let's start with the comment 1. It says the first 9 frames are perfect. Okay, that's awesome. Let's go to the next comment. I wonder how Mira would look like with blue hair. All right, and the last comment is the rest is perfect as well. Okay, so we know that all the frames up until 10 and all the frames after 40 are perfect, so we don't need to review them. We can use our range widget to change our start and end frame. So we can set the start frame to be 10 and end frame to be 40. And timeline updates, and now we can focus only on the content that needs to be reviewed. Going back to the comment, I wonder how Mira would look like with blue hair. So I already created a new playlist and drew with a blue airbrush over the character to simulate the blue hair. Okay, so now we can try to compare. We can go between the playlist 2 and playlist 1 but it is somewhat difficult to do direct comparison. For this, we can use background modes. Background modes are extremely useful when we want to compare content between two playlists. So let's get back to our playlist 2. Let's isolate the frame that we want to compare by setting the start frame and end frame to be 28. Now we can go back to our main playlist. We can alt-click the second playlist. This sets it as the background playlist, allowing us to use any of the background operations, such as wipe, side-by-side, top to bottom, picture-in-picture. All right, so let's start with wipe mode. We now can wipe between playlist 1 and playlist 2. Okay, so that's a good comparison. Let's try now side-by-side, top to bottom, picture-in-picture. We can also swap foreground and background. Okay, so I think I did a pretty good job, but definitely K-pop artists did much better. So we're going to stick with the original hair color. All right, let's get back to our review for the playlist 1. So we're done with this clip. Let's go to the next comment. So this comment says, send the file over to Bob after review. They want to use it as a reference. I wonder where the file is actually saved. For this, we can use show media path. Show media path is an overlay widget, and all overlay widgets in RPA are HTML-based, which means they're easily configured, initiated, and styled. All of overlays are also draggable and toggleable. So now I know exactly where the clip is saved, and I can note it down and send it over to Bob right after the session. Okay, moving on to the next comment. This comment says this can be a good vertical poster. Okay, so let's clean up the viewport and turn off the overlays. And let's use our rotation slider to change rotation to 90 degrees. Let's now zoom out a little bit. Okay, so this does look actually like a good vertical poster. So I'm gonna note down the clip and the frame and use it as a reference for next time. Cool, so I think we're done with this particular playlist. Let's move on to our very last playlist. And in that playlist, it says to review clip number 5. Okay, so here they say that rethink the pattern. But right now, I don't really see anything. So let's use an f-stop slider to up the exposure and try to see more details. Okay, now we can see there's some kind of wave patterns that they're talking about, and they don't really like the shape. Okay, we can also get similar result using gamma slider. Again, we can see the wave in this case, and they don't really like the pattern. Okay, so I'm going to note down this shot and tell the artist that they need to rethink the pattern for this particular frame. Awesome. I think we're done with all of the comments. The review is done, and I can go get some coffee. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Akim. Next, I invite Pavel to talk about how to give feedback.
Yeah, hello everyone. So in this part of the demo, I will show you how to give feedback to artists using annotations in RPA mode. This feature lets you add visual notes directly on frames using scribbles, text, and color corrections. Let's start with the scribbles. You can use the pen tool to draw freehand lines. That's that button on the left. And you can change the color of the pen with the color picker widget. You can also change the thickness of the pen with this button on the left again. If you want to draw straw lines, we have a line tool for that. For multiple connected straight lines, you can use multi-line tool. To remove any scribbles, you can use eraser tool. And you can also adjust the thickness of eraser tool. The next tool I will show you is a hand tool. And this tool can be used for moving, scaling, and rotating the scribbles. So you can use the left mouse button to move scribbles on the frame. The right mouse button can be used for scaling them up and down. And the middle mouse button is used for rotating them. Next tool is a text tool, and you can use it to add text anywhere on the frame. And we can also change the color of the text with the same color picker widget. And text size can be also adjusted. Yeah, perfect. So we have also the undo and redo stack. So you can use Ctrl-Z to go back in the history, and Ctrl-Y to redo all the scribbles again. And now let's look at color corrections. You can add color corrections using the color corrector window. So let's open the color corrector window. And you can see we have two types of nodes here. The first one is the color timer, which has controls like offset, slope, power, and saturation. And the second one is color grade, which has gain, gamma, black point, white point, and lift. Let's, for example, change the offset of the frame, and you can use the slider to adjust all color channels at the same time. Or you can also go inside the offset node by clicking that little icon there. And let's, for example, change only the red channel, red offset channel. And by default, this color correction is applied to all frames in the clip. So all frames are color corrected now. But we can also color correct only the current frame, and we can do that by clicking that plus button in the color corrector window. And let's, for example, change only the green offset channel. And as you can see, only the frame number 10 is affected by this color change. And our users wanted to be able to color correct only some particular regions on the frame. So we added rectangle tool for that, and ellipse tool. They can select ellipses, and also we have a lasso tool. So with these three tools, you can select any arbitrary part, like regions on the frame, and color correct them separately. Let's, for example, change the blue offset channel. In the case the edge of the region is a bit too sharp, we can smoothen them up by setting the fall off parameter, which will blur the edges a bit. And we can also define multiple color correction regions on the same frame. So let's click that plus button again and define one more color correction. Let's, for example, change the saturation to 0. And let's create some rectangle where it will be applied. And as you can see, all these three color corrections we now have are applied in the order they are defined in the color corrector window. And we can also swap the order by dragging the frame color corrections. Let's, for example, swap the last two. And as you can see, the frame is also re-rendered correctly. We can also get rid of the color corrections by clicking that red cross. And yeah, that's it for the color corrections. The last thing I will show you is that we can save the session, including all annotations, and we can use the file menu, and there's a save RPA session option for that. Okay, let's save it into some file on disk. And when you open a new RV in RPA mode, you can load it back using the file menu and replace RPA session option. Let's load the same file. And as you can see, all the annotations we created are back, including the color corrections. And the frames which are color corrected or annotated are indicated with this yellow color in the timeline. Okay, thank you. That's it for the demo.
Thank you, Pavel. So yeah, that concludes our demos. Hopefully that gave everybody an idea of what these widgets are, and these are some of the most popular features for WIP users. So we're happy to bring it to the OpenRV users. Next, let's switch gears and we'll go into technical details of how this all works, and this may be of interest mostly for developers and especially for plugin developers. So for that, let me invite Maria Panir, who will be going through this.
Hey everyone, over the next 20 minutes, we're going to go over the RPA architecture and then use that knowledge to build an RPA widget. So let's get started. RPA has been designed to be a modern, high-level API to build review tools and widgets on a playlist-based review session. Next. And this playlist-based review session has been set up to work on top of any review system that has the RPA implementation on it. Now, when it comes to the RPA architecture, following are the 5 key ideas behind it. Idea number 1, RPA has and manages its own playlist-based review session. Now, this idea is basically the idea that gets to wear the crown. All the other 4 ideas basically exist to facilitate this playlist-based review session. And then idea number 2, RPA fundamentally is a abstraction layer on top of review systems such as OpenRV or XStudio. And this abstraction layer is what helps us to facilitate this playlist-based review session, even on top of review systems such as OpenRV, which might not natively be wired to facilitate such a workflow. And then idea number 3, RPA has a collection of 5 thoughtfully curated and organized API modules. And all of these 5 API modules help us to manage and control the RPA session. And then idea number 4. For the RPA API, the source of truth is the RPA session itself and not the underlying review systems session. And then idea number 5, delegates. Whenever we call any RPA API method, that in turn calls just a bunch of delegates. A delegate is basically just a Python callable. And using the RPA API, we can add additional delegates to any RPA API method to extend its capabilities. So these are the 5 key ideas behind the RPA architecture. Now let's go over them one by one in more detail, starting with the RPA session. So the RPA session is what helps us to facilitate this playlist-based review workflow paradigm. And in an RPA session, you can have any number of playlists, and each playlist can have any number of clips, and each clip then can have any number of attributes, including feedback attributes such as annotations that include strokes and text, and also color corrections. So this is a bird's eye view of the RPA session. Next. So the second idea, RPA fundamentally is an abstraction layer on top of review systems such as OpenRV and XStudio. So this basically empowers VFX and animation studios to build their review tools and workflows one time using the RPA API, and then they are free to use their review tools on top of any review system such as OpenRV, XStudio, or even Nuke for that matter, as long as that application has the RPA implementation on it. Next. Now, RPA is a collection of these 5 API modules. Let's go over each of them and see what they, control. So when it comes to the session API, it controls the playlist, clips, and their attributes. And then the timeline API controls the playback timeline. And then we have the annotation API, which helps us control the feedback annotations such as strokes and text. And then we have the color API, which helps us control the OCI or color spaces and also do color corrections on frames and clips. And then finally, we have the viewport API, which helps us control the viewport transformations. So all these 5 API modules together help us control the RPA session itself. And then the fourth key idea, the source of truth. For the RPA API, the source of truth is the RPA session itself and not the underlying review system session. So that means when you create your review tools and widgets, which we collectively call as the RPA widgets, using the RPA API, and let's say you create a couple of playlists and you add a bunch of clips to it and change the clip attributes. When you do any of this, it first gets manifested in the RPA session itself, and then the host review system session is wired to reflect the state of the RPA session. So the RPA session is a source of truth, not only for the RPA widgets and the API, but when you are in this RPA mode, it is also the source of truth for the underlying review systems session. Next. And finally, delegates. So whenever you call any RPA API method, that in turn calls a bunch of delegates. And here is a bit of a pseudocode to show the order in which these delegates are called. Now, to any RPA API method, like all the arguments that come in are just directly passed into all these delegates. And we start with first calling, next, all the permission delegates that are associated with the method. And only if all the permission delegates return true, only then, we even go to the next line and call all the pre-delegates that are associated with that method. And then is when we call the core delegate. Now the core delegate is singular. There's only, it can only be a single callable, which actually has the core, which actually has the implementation of that API method. And that will return an output which is captured and then passed on to all the post delegates that are associated with this method. Next. Now, out of these 4 different types of delegates that could be associated with an API method, next, only the core delegate is already wired up. The core delegate, with the core implementation is already wired by default, so you don't have to tinker with it. But the other 3 delegates are optional, and using the API, you can add, these additional delegates to any API method. Next, and how will it look like? So it'll look like something like this. So here we have an RPA widget called the delegate adder. And on it, what we are doing is basically we are adding a permission delegate to the create clips API method. So here you can see, since the create clips API method is part of the session API module, so we use the delegate manager of the session API to add this permission delegate. And that permission delegate is directly in your plugin. Next. So you can see how, that callable is just a simple Python callable and is directly in your plugin, in your RPA widget. Now, since this callable has been added as a permission delegate to the create clips API method, from that point on, in the session, anytime anybody creates a clips using this create clips API method, this permission delegate from your RPA widget is also going to get considered. So these permission delegates is not just for your widget alone, but you're manipulating the entire session. So only if this permission delegate returns true will anybody in the session be even able to create clips. So that's the amount of power we get by means of using these delegates. Next. So we can use a similar style for adding the other two types of delegates. So here we are adding a pre-delegate to the create clips. So next, we can see that this callable is going to get called before any clips are created. Next. And also we can add a post delegate, like, and this will be called, and this callable next. The post delegate callable will get called after clips are created. And the cool thing about the post delegates is, since they are called after the actual core delegate is executed, you get that output of the core delegate, and that's also passed in as an argument. So using these things, you can also do some really cool logic and set up some very interesting review tools and review workflows. Next. So especially because of this post delegate and the pre delegate mechanism that we have in RPA API, every RPA API method is now a signal, and this gives complete visibility for plugin developers over the entire RPA session. So they can literally listen to everything that is going on in the RPA session. And just by adding a delegate, like just by adding a pre or a post delegate, it's essentially like having, you're connecting a slot to a signal, and the signal here is the API method, right? So that's a really powerful concept, and you can create some very interesting and really powerful review experiences by means of using these delegates. Next. So yes, so these are the 5 key ideas behind the RPA architecture. Next. And in summary, to reiterate the design purpose, RPA has been designed to be a modern, high-level API to build review tools and widgets on a playlist-based review session. Next. And this playlist-based review session has been set up to work on top of any review system, such as OpenRV or XStudio, as long as that review system has the RPA implementation on it. So next, with all this knowledge, let's actually build an RPA widget together now. Next. So even before we start, like in order to build an RPA widget, first of all, we need the RPA source code. And the RPA source code can be found under the ORI shared platform repo, which is under the Academy Software Foundation's GitHub. So you can either download or clone the project into your machine. I've already done that, and let me open up my VS Code. So here is the VS Code with that folder opened. And we have the ORI shared platform repo, and under that, the directory called RPA. So under the RPA directory, there is a folder called widgets, which basically contains all the widgets we just now saw demoed by the team. Now we're going to create a new widget here, but even before we do that, first of all, we need to build and install RPA on top of a local OpenRV build. And this is an important step because at the moment we have RPA implementation only on OpenRV. So we need to have a local OpenRV build available so that we can build and install the RPA artifacts on top of the OpenRV build. And the detailed steps to do that can be found under the RPA folder's readme.md file. So in this markdown file, under the build and install section, you have the instruction. It's very simple. It's just a two-step process. You just need to build and then install. And even for that, we have these convenience scripts available. So for Windows users, we have the PowerShell script. And for Linux and Mac users, we have the, the bash shell scripts. Now, one thing to note though, RPA works as expected on Windows and also on Linux. With Mac, it has its quirks, so watch out for that. So now, since we are building RPA on Windows, let's copy the PowerShell script and we'll run it on the PowerShell terminal inside of VS Code. Make sure you're on the root level of your repo when you run this script. Yes, we are running a build script that will build the artifacts, and then let's install those artifacts on top of the local OpenRV build. And we have installed that as well. And once that is done, now we can launch OpenRV, and we'll be able to see that when you launch OpenRV, it'll just be like a regular OpenRV as we saw in the demo. And the one thing that is different is like we have this switch to RPA mode. because by default, we launch it in the open RV mode because the RPA session works on top of the open RV session. And in order to enter into this RPA session, we use that menu. And now we are in the RPA mode inside of on top of OpenRV. And we can see the tools menu, and there we have the RPA widgets, and all the widgets are listed here. So we want to add a new widget called, let's create a widget called playlist creator. All right. And we want to have a menu there, and that widget will help us create a bunch of playlists. So that's what we are going to build together. Now, in order to build that, basically in order to create these playlists, we need to know what is the API, that we could use to create playlists. Now, there are different ways in which you can find the API. My favorite way is to use this RPA Python interpreter, which is directly available on OpenRV. And this RPA interpreter is much like the interpreters that you find in like DCCs like Maya or Nuke. It has RPA, it understands it, and it even does auto completion for you. So you can say like RPA dot, since we want to create playlists, most probably it's under the session API module. So let's type session, and it even auto completes it for us. And then we want to find the method. So if you want to know more about the methods, you can always use the RPA API read the docs documentation. There you have that search widget, and we search for playlist, and we can see that playlist is mentioned under the session API module. And yes, there is a method, that's exactly what we are looking for, right? Create playlist. You can see even the documentation for that is there. So let's type create playlist, and you can see all the different options that are available when you type create. And since this is a Python interpreter, all the Python commands can also be run here. So let's run help on this method, and you just select it and press Control Enter to execute that line. So I can see that that same documentation that we saw in read the docs is like here directly in OpenRV, you can read there itself, or you can come even to read the docs and read the documentation. And you can see that for create playlist API method, it requires just one required argument, which are the names, the list of names that you want the playlist created to have. So let's pass in the list of names to this API method. So here we want to create two playlists. Let's create a playlist called anim and a playlist called comp. And you can just select that line and press Control Enter, or you can even press the run, and you press the run button, it'll just execute everything. And you can see when you executed that line, two new playlists just got created in real time, right? So that's really awesome. You can actually experiment and try out different methods, and that are available under different modules directly using the RPA interpreter, and you can get a sense of RPA's power and simplicity. So yes, so basically you can keep experimenting with it. But for our use case, for our playlist creator RPA widget, this is the API that we need. We basically need to create playlists. So we'll just copy this API and keep it with us. And even before we use this API, we need to have some kind of a user interface that we can provide to our users, so that it'll have a button which people can click on to create the playlist. So how do you create that widget? And also we want to add a menu under the RPA widgets which people can click on, so that this nice dockable widget will show or hide. And how do we set that up? So in order to create these user interfaces and menus in the RPA mode, there is a file called RPA widgets mode. It's basically an RV package. So it is one of the two RV packages that get built when you build the project. And this package is basically what is responsible for setting up the RPA mode. You can read more about it and read the docs OpenRV implementation. Here in this page, we have a detailed description on these two RV packages that get built and the purpose of these two packages. And it has a lot of diagrams explaining. But RPA widgets mode is primarily the RV package that is responsible for setting up this RPA mode and also loading up all the RPA widgets. So in this file, there will be a method called setup RPA widgets menu. So let's go to that menu. So you can here set up RPA widgets menu. And this method is what is responsible for adding all those menus. So you can see the session manager, the background modes, annotation tools, all those widgets that were listed is basically because of this method. So let's add a new menu called the playlist creator. So let's uncomment that line. And then, now the menu is added, and when users click on it, it basically will call this callable, which will set up that playlist creator widget. So, if not already, just create an instance of that widget and set it up as a dockable widget. Let's also import that widget from the widgets folder. It's a simple widget that has these two buttons. We'll look at it now. Let's build and install RPA and launch it in an RV, and we can see under the RPA widgets we have now a menu called the playlist creator, and when you click on it, this widget shows up. This playlist creator widget shows up. It's a simple widget, just these two buttons are there. Now it won't do anything because we have not added any RPA API to it. So if you click, the idea is when you click on that button, create playlist, it should use that API to create those playlists for us. And we also have another method to control whether people can create or not create playlists. Using delegates, we'll set it up. But for now, we'll set up that button, the create playlist button. So when the user click on it, so this is that callable that will be called. And here, this is that API method that we found using the RPA interpreter. So basically, we are adding that here, create playlist, and it's going to create those 4 playlists. When we build and install now, and we press the button, we have those 4 playlists created, right? So we have a working RPA widget, and it's simple as that to create these widgets, using the RPA API, because it's like a high level language that we can use, API that we can use. So now when you just press the button, it just creates these playlists for us. And let's take it a step further and add a bit of delegates to this RPA widget. So let's add a permission delegate that we talked about during the presentation, and we'll add a permission delegate to the create playlist. So, and this permission is going to be based on the pressed state of the second toggleable button. So only if the button is in the allow playlist creation mode, it'll return true and people can create playlists. Otherwise, they cannot create playlists. And we'll also add, this post delegate to, show the signal and slot mechanism that we can set up using these delegates. So we are adding a post delegate as well to the create playlist. And this is the callable that will be called after, playlists are created in the session. And it'll just show up this message box showing the names of the playlists that got created. So when we build and install, and when we now press the create playlist, you can see, not only did, all those four playlists get created, we also see that post delegate in action, right? It's showing up this message box with those, playlist names. So that's pretty cool. And this works across the entire session. It's not just for the widget. So even when we try to create a playlist from another widget like the session manager, it will still have that post delegate working. And now what we'll do is we'll just control the playlist creation. So if we now press that button to disallow playlist creation, the permission delegate is going to return false. And because it returns false, if now people try to create playlists either using the session manager or even using our playlist creator, it would not be allowed. Even if you use the context menu, whatever means, that API, will be blocked because the permission delegate from our widget returns false. So let's set it back to return true. So now again, people can start creating playlists. So either using the playlist creator, or they can use the session manager to create playlists, and you can even see the post delegate in action. So yes, so this is now a completely functional RPA widget, and we have built it together. Congrats for following along. So now, you can keep tinkering with it and keep, building on top of it. And once you're really happy and once you've created this awesome, really powerful RPA widget, please do create a pull request so that it gets merged and available as part of this official list of widgets and shared with our community. So this was an overview of the RPA architecture and how you would use that knowledge to build an RPA widget. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Maria. We are almost at the end with just a few more slides. So quickly, what is next? So our next steps are to just bring more plugins from EPU. We have more than 100 plugins actively in use at ImageWorks, and we would like to bring not all of them make sense outside because a lot of them are tied to our infrastructure, our databases, and so on. But whatever is general purpose, open sourceable, we would like to bring it to RPA. And then another big push is just making it work with the sync server. Already we, people know about Autodesk Live Review, and there are other sync servers, and internally we also use our own sync server. Perhaps RPA is a mechanism by which all these different products can talk to each other through some common protocol using OTIO and so on. So we would like to spend some effort on that. If you are interested in playing with this, here is the GitHub page where you can go download the source code. There is some documentation for you to read. And if you like to get involved, the biggest thing you can do is just give us feedback. What you think, would you use it? What's your experience if you use it? Plugin contributions are highly welcome. If you're an OpenRV user, if you have plugins that you developed and you want to make it as into an RPA widget and make it available to other people, we are happy to support you. Big gap is implementation for other playback engine, especially Studio. If you are using a Studio in your facility and you are interested in this concept, and if you want to collaborate with us, you are more than welcome to join. You can find us on the ASWF Slack. So that's all we had. Thank you so much. Happy to take any questions for a few minutes if there is any.
Looks like there's one question. Is the low-level architecture still running as a separate OpenRV playback process or with a separate UI process?
In this mode, they're all the same process. Yeah. So it's just calling the underlying RV API.
If no one else is going to ask, so presumably it was a kind of a good reason. Was it a performance or something about communication between the two, or just a capability you couldn't make work?
For the reason for doing the skin, or
yeah, because I was last year your demonstration was basically you had a separate kind of playback engine process running that meant that process did not get tied up with anything running in the GUI thread or anything else and stuff. Yeah. That was kind of quite appealing.
Right. Yeah, that's how we are building it V5. That's again, yeah, not open source. It's internally. That's how we are building that architecture. But it's using the same RPA library, but in a separate process, and it's doing the multi-process communication. But for OpenRV users, it becomes too complicated. So you wanted to just make it as part of an RPA, like a RV package. You just install as like any other package, and then they all become as part of the same process. So much simpler architecture and easy to support and so on. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. If not, thank you all for your time.